Hi all, in this video, we shall show to do role changes, switchover, failover, reinstate using the new data guard group resource with multiple standby databases using OCI console. Kindly watch the part 1 video, multiple standby databases prior to watching this video. This is our demo environment. We will create a local and a standby database using the new data guard group resource. We have a primary in Amsterdam, and first we create a local region standby database in Amsterdam. We then create another remote region standby database using the OCI console in Frankfurt. In Amsterdam, I have my local region standby database, and in Frankfurt, I have the remote standby database. So in the center, I have my VM AMS2 with my local region standby database. So as you can see here, it is in read-only with apply and physical standby. In my VM FRA, I have my remote standby database, and as you can see, it is read-only with apply and database role is physical standby. And to the left, VM AMS1 is my primary database. As you can see, the open mode is read-write. So as you can see here in the broker, when I've done my show configuration, it shows the protection mode, maximum performance and the members. So I have the primary database with two standby databases, one in the local region and one in the remote region. We shall now switch over to the local standby database in Amsterdam. So first let's go to the VM AMS1 where our primary database is. As you can see, the database role is primary. Go to the data guard group. So listed here is the primary database and the standby databases. So in my local region database, I shall click switch over. Provide the admin password. Click on switch over. You can now go to the local region standby database. So the database is now in an updating state. And monitor the work request. So as you can see here, the work request is successfully completed. So as you can see here, the database on VM cluster 2 is now showing primary and the database in Amsterdam on VM cluster 1 is showing as standby. And if you can see here, there is a role reversal. The VM 1 in AMS is now read-only with apply and the VM 2 in AMS is now read-write with the database role primary. Let's do some archive log switches and then check the status of the standby. So we can check both the local region standby as well as the remote region standby. And if you see here, it is successfully applying redo from the primary database. Now let's connect to our PDB and we can do a transaction on a table and verify the same. So you can see in the local region standby database as well as in the remote region standby database, the changes have been replicated. I now hand over to Rob to show the failover and reinstate.
Thanks, Sneha. Now let's take a look at a failover scenario. So in this demo, we're going to fail over from the current primary database in Amsterdam cluster 2, and we will fail over to the remote standby which is running under Frankfurt. We'll see we'll be left with a disabled standby, which was the previous primary in cluster 2, and the additional physical standby still running in cluster 1. So the first thing to do is to go to cluster 2, locate our database, and this is currently running the primary. We'll scroll down, we'll select our database, and we can see the data guard status is enabled and the database role is primary. If we select the data guard group, we're able to see our current primary running in Amsterdam under cluster 2 and our two standbys, a local standby running on cluster 1 in Amsterdam and our remote standby running in Frankfurt. If we select the menu item for the Frankfurt standby, we can select failover, and this will fail over the data guard to Frankfurt. We enter in the admin password for the database and hit failover. We can see now the database is being marked as updated. If we go to the Frankfurt database, we can see this is also marked as updating as well. The current role is standby and data guard is enabled, but if we select work requests, we can see there is a new work request which is failover data guard. We can see the log messages, so we can see what's happening, and we can also see it's currently at around 60% complete. This has been successful. We can see that the work request is completed, it's marked as succeeded, so the failover has taken place. If we check our error messages, we should see there are no error messages. If we go back to our database details, we can see we're in Frankfurt and now the role is primary. And we go to our data guard association, we can see the previous primary is now marked as a disabled standby. Our local standby in cluster 1 is still enabled, and Frankfurt is now marked as the primary. If we log on to each of the different systems, if we look at the configuration, we can see it's telling us that the remote standby is now the primary, which is SNR WMS-R1. We can see the previous primary _L is now marked as needing to be reinstantiated, and we still have our other local standby. If we connect to cluster 2 in Amsterdam, we can see we're being told this database may no longer be the primary database. And if we connect to the Frankfurt cluster and have a look at the configuration, again we can see that we are now the primary database, but the previous primary is marked as disabled and will need to be reinstantiated. So now let's take a look at the reinstate process of the disabled standby. So our target configuration at the end of this procedure is to go back to having a primary database, which is going to be the Frankfurt region, the one we failed over to, and 2 physical standbys, both remote to Frankfurt, one in cluster 1 and one in cluster 2 of the Amsterdam infrastructure. So let's go to the cluster. Let's select our disabled standby, select the menu and select reinstate. We'll be asked to enter the database admin password and then hit reinstate. We can see the database is being marked as updating, and if we go to that database in cluster 2 of Amsterdam, we can see data guard is marked as enabled but a disabled standby. If we go down to work requests, we can see reinstate data guard work request has been started. It's at 10% complete. We can look at the log messages to see what's happening. We're now at 60% complete, and we can see the log messages being updated with the different tasks it's undertaking. The reinstate has been successful. The work request has moved to green. We go back to our database details. You can see the database is back to green, and now the database role is marked as standby rather than disabled standby. And we can see this reflected in the data guard group as well. So we now have our primary in Frankfurt, a remote standby in Amsterdam cluster 1, and a remote standby in Amsterdam cluster 2. Which we have just re-enabled. The apply lag and transport lag not quite showing up yet because obviously they need a bit of time before they can be calculated. Let's select the primary database in Frankfurt. Select data guard group. And again, it's showing the same information for us. If we go back to our terminals, if we connect to the data guard broker under the Frankfurt terminal and have a look at the configuration, it shows us the primary, which is Frankfurt, and 2 physical standby databases. So let's clear the screen and connect to each of our databases. We'll connect via SQL Plus to the Frankfurt database first, which is our primary. And we can see it's open read write. If we connect to our reinstantiated standby, we can see it's open read only with apply. This is a physical standby. And if we connect to our other standby, which is running out of cluster 1 of Amsterdam, we can see again it's read only with apply. It's a physical standby. If we run archive log list from the primary, we can see our current log sequence is 4. Let's just run an alter system archive log current. Let's run this several times. We can see this is now progressed to log sequence 8. If we take a look at $v manage standby, we can see the archiver processes allocated and connected. If we do this on the other standby, we can see that logs are being applied. So maybe we need to switch and change instance on our reinstantiated standby. Maybe the logs are being applied from the other instance. You would expect to see logs being applied here on this system. We can see all of the data guard processes are running. So let's just see if it's actually applying the log from the other instance. So we'll need to disconnect from this instance and connect to the other node. Okay, let's run the query again, and we should see, hopefully we will see logs being applied to this standby as well. And yes, we can see there that the logs are being applied, as you would expect. So as one final test, let's connect to our PDB of the primary, PDB0. Let's select star from our test table. We can see we're up to 4. Let's insert it into the test table a new value. One row has been created. Let's now connect to our standbys. And check from that table. And we can see that DataGuard has replicated the value across to the standbys. Let's check our secondary standby as well. And the secondary standby has the changes as well. So one final thing, we can look through the logs to get more details of what's going on. So we can see DataGuard notifying the clusterware for a prepare and change of database role. Notice under that line, the database reinstate needs instance count to be reduced to 1 during this process. And then notice log messages physical standby reinstatement, so it's converting the old primary to a physical standby, and then it's telling us that that's been successful. So there's lots of information in the logs. But here we can see at the end the database standbys and the primary, and we're seeing them as enabled. This ends the demo. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed it.